Hola, hola, ¿cómo están? Hello guys, how are you doing? So, if you thought the suffering ended yesterday, it hasn't finished yet. So tonight we will review this subject, passive voice, because it is very common that some of us feel confused about how to recognize mistakes related to this topic. So this is an extra class, a gift, however you would like to call it. But let's see. So, sorry, here. Hi, Firas.
Hey, I'm in the chat now.
Yes.
How's everybody doing?
Tell them about the TikTok.
About the TikTok. I heard about the TikTok. I'm not sure I'm interested in getting on camera for well, I'm on camera now, right? But you know, this is enough for me.
I know it's very difficult. Yeah. For me, it was very tough. I'm because it's new, right? You are not used to.
I'm an old man already.
Yes. We are too old, but it will be just for the class. Well, you can share it with whoever you want. Hello Denise, Jaycee, María del Rocío, Ale, Masi, Fernanda, Perla, Cassandra, Antonio, Patty. Welcome guys. Alright, so firstly we will show you a video that explains like an introduction about this topic, and then we will practice, explain you, and do some activities, okay? I hope you can listen my audio properly. If you don't, I will. Okay, let's do a trial. Hi Marta, hi Gabi. Okay.
In the active and the passive voice, and that's a distinction that applies to verbs. So if we look at the first voice, and that's a distinction that applies to verbs. So if we look at the first example here, a Russian oligarch bought my Ferrari. Not something you say every day. Well, here we have a verb, bought, and this one is active because the subject, a Russian oligarch, is actively doing the action. It's not happening to the oligarch, it's the oligarch doing the action. If we want to make it passive, then we typically take the object, so that's my Ferrari, and now the action is going to happen to our new subject, so we say was bought, right? The Ferrari is not doing the buying, but the action happens to our subject. And then we take our previous subject and we make it the object if we want to include it. Now to do that, we include this little preposition by. So this is the most common construction. You can call this a by construction, and we write it was bought by a Russian oligarch. A Russian oligarch. And that's all there is to it. So the passive voice then is formed from two parts. The first part is the verb be, to be, and the second part is the past participle. And if you look at this example here, you'll see that the past participle will never change. It'll always stay the same. But you can change the verb to be. So you could say is bought, was bought, will be bought. All of these are fine, and they just change the tense of the past participle. Of the passive voice. Okay, so now that we know the basic distinction, let's go through a few more variations here, and we'll see some other interesting things about the active and the passive voice. The next two examples show that this by construction doesn't always have to be added. Okay, so the real subject may not actually be stated in these.
Great. I will pause it a little bit to analyze this example. Okay, so a Russian oligarch bought my Ferrari. Okay, so this is the subject who does the action, and the action goes to this. Entonces, A este le vamos a llamar como el sujeto, y este sujeto realiza la acción que recae en otra cosa.
Sentences. You also note.
Entonces, aquí dice, una oligarquía Rusia compró mi Ferrari. Qué pésimo ejemplo. Y aquí dice, mi Ferrari fue comprado por una oligarquía Rusia. Okay. Este nada más es un ejemplo de introducción, pero vamos a revisarlo pasito a pasito, ¿sale? A ver, quiero que anoten todas las dudas. Ahora, es positivo cuando no entendemos algo, porque hay que reconocer qué es lo que no entendemos. Entonces, quiero que piensen de esto que acaban de oír, todo lo que se les hace confuso. Se me hace confuso por qué aquí le puso el was, cómo saber cuál es el sujeto y lo que le llaman el objeto, en qué tiempo va el verbo. O sea, anoten 5 preguntas sobre cosas que no vayan a entender de este video. Voy a ponerle un poquito más. Y recuerden, es importante que identifiquen qué cosas no están entendiendo, ¿sale? Entonces, esta actividad es para sacar dudas. O sea, como todos ay, pero ¿por qué esto? ¿Por qué esto? Espera, no entiendo acá, ¿sale? Okay.
Notice that got, so both of these are passive voice verbs, that got something or sometimes replaces to be. That's fairly rare, but it's a more casual approach. So if you say, my car got vandalized, you could also say, my car was vandalized. So just something to watch out for. The next thing to notice is that often the active voice is much more direct, and sometimes it's even awkward to use the passive voice. If you were to turn this into the passive voice, you would say, a new chair. Okay, so here's our new subject. A new chair was bought by Karen, and you can hear that sounds pretty awkward. So I would suggest you just stick with the active voice. Some teachers go overboard and they say you should correct this all the time. If you see the passive voice, change it because the active voice is more direct, it's quicker, more succinct. I think that's a bit over the top. And the passive voice does have its uses. So if you look at the next 2 examples, we see a couple of uses of the passive voice. First of all, if you use the passive voice because you don't know who the actual subject is, or if you simply want to draw attention to your new subject, that's completely fine. And you can see here that maybe you don't know who called off the game. Maybe it was the referee, maybe it was some official. If you don't know, that's fine. You just use the passive voice and you can avoid that question. Or if it doesn't really matter and you want to draw attention, as mentioned, to your new subject, you can do that as well. Another place where the passive voice is commonly used is in academic writing, so academic prose. And you don't want to overdo this, but in academic prose, the passive voice makes your writing sound a little bit more abstract. You have to be careful with that because if you're only doing it to make yourself sound smart, that's not a good enough reason. It really does have to have a purpose. If you look at this example here, if you're writing, let's say, a history about the bikini, and you don't really care who named the bikini, you're more interested in the naming itself, well, maybe you can use the passive voice here. If you do care, then you can obviously change this around, and you can see that it's really up to you ultimately. Incidentally, you might be interested to know that the bikini was named in the 1940s, late 1940s, after the atomic testing that was taking place at the Bikini Atoll. And the reason was that the inventor, or the person who coined the name at least, felt that the bikini was going to be equally explosive. So there you go. Speaking of essays, you'll often find this construction, I will argue, at the beginning of a thesis statement. Some people...
Esto es una buena introducción para dar opiniones. Ojo, lo pueden utilizar para sus ensayos. Argumentaré que, les explicaré que.
People like to write, it will be argued, which is much more cumbersome, much more abstract. I think I would stay away from that. It's quite an awkward passive construction. At the same time, though, you'll find that in some disciplines, people disapprove of the use of I. For For instance, a lot of history teachers will prefer that you don't use I and you write in a more abstract voice. The reason is that they think that sounds more objective, which I really think is rubbish, but that's up to them, I suppose. So there's the difference. Try to avoid these really awkward constructions, but sometimes perhaps they're inevitable.
Okay, bueno, vamos a pausarlo aquí. We'll pause it here.
Yeah. So that's basically a small overview, but we'll be going over it in more detail for you guys. Because it is a little bit complex, and I'm not sure that video explained it as well as he should have. Yeah. So if we think about passive, it means the opposite of active. It means you're not doing anything, so something is happening to you, right? So if we think about the subject is usually the thing that does the acting. So we'll call it the actor, or if you like, we'll call it the agent.
Perdón. Okay, yes, the actor. Entonces, les voy a ir explicando un poco I will explain you what you say in English.
Sure, yeah. So the subject or the actor, just to make it easier for you to understand the role of the word. So if we have, say, the active sentence, the dog bit the boy, obviously the actor is the dog and then the boy is the object, he's the passive. But if I want the boy to be more important in the sentence, I might make it passive and bring the object to the front. So I would say the boy something by the dog. And as we saw in that video, we have the verb to be, and then the past participle of the verb. So in this case, it would be the boy was bitten by the dog.
Yeah. So let's write that example. So what Firas is telling us tengo que activar mi Windows. Sorry. Is that sometimes if you want the subject, a ver, les voy a explicar en español porque si, iba a repetir lo mismo que Firas, pero entonces, can you repeat your example for us?
So the active form would be the dog bit the boy.
Okay. Passive.
And for Patty, it can be in the present, and we'll go over that. The main verb is always going to be in the past participle, but you will be changing the to be verb to change the tense. And we'll go over a couple of those examples too,
Okay.
The boy bit the boy?
Sí. Perdón.
I mean, maybe.
No, the other boy, the dog, I'm sorry. The boy beat the dog. No! Sorry, I'm too tired. No. Okay, finally, the dog beat the boy. Okay, this is a good example to recognize who is who. If I did it on purpose, lo hice a propósito. ¿Qué pasa si yo les pongo? Aquí está. Que fíjense cómo este es mi sujeto o el actor. El actor que es lo más importante. Algo que nos estaba comentando Firas, un tip es que cuando tú quieres que el perro sea lo más importante, que tome acción, vas a escribirlo en forma activa. Pero si tú quieres dar un énfasis en que el hecho de que fue mordido, aquí es más importante, esto es más importante. No me importa quién, pero lo más importante aquí es que es esto, fue mordido por el perro. Y acá va a tener prioridad el perro más que la acción. ¿Se fijan? Aquí esto es lo prioritario y acá lo prioritario es esto. A ver, antes de que nos empecemos a confundir con las explicaciones que vamos a revisar, les quiero explicar que la analogía más simple para entender la voz pasiva es revisar cómo se llama en español. Si yo les digo, a ver, ¿cómo reconoces? Cuando yo te digo, el libro fue escrito por, no sé, el libro fue escrito por García Márquez. ¿Qué diferencia tiene con García Márquez escribió el libro? Entonces, el perro mordió al niño. Entonces voy a marcar aquí. ¿Se fijan cómo a veces es un poquito difícil explicar? Es más fácil en este caso hacer la analogía en español. Lo bueno es que tenemos el mismo tiempo, afortunadamente. Hay muchas cosas que no son iguales, pero en este caso sí es igual. Aquí está. Entonces, ¿cómo se traduciría? De nuevo, ustedes díganme, ¿cómo traducimos este? Recuerden que siempre los verbos en voz pasiva son los que terminan en ado, ido, tocho. Entonces, a ver, escríbanlo en el chat. ¿Cómo se traduce este enunciado? Exacto. El niño fue mordido, ado, ido, tocho. Este es nuestro... por el perro. Muy bien. Okay, Firas, we can continue.
Okay, yeah, so as Patty was asking earlier, you can change the tense,
yes.
But that doesn't change the tense of the main verb. It changes the auxiliary. So in this case, it would be to be or was. So in the case of it's happening right now, the present continuous, the active would be the dog is biting the boy. What do you guys think would be the passive version?
Perdón.
So we're switching around the subject and the object in the sentence order. And then bitten would be the same because it is the past participle. Okay?
Yeah.
And then...
Just, I will write an example. What Firas is saying...
it's there in the YouTube chat. The dog is biting the boy.
Okay. I didn't...
So that's just the tense change.
Yeah. Ok. Vamos a ver otro ejemplo. Esto está en pasado simple, pero vamos a ver cómo realmente la voz activa y pasiva sí se pueden conjugar en muchos tiempos. Vamos a ver un ejemplo. Cuando estamos utilizando presente continuo, aquí está. La voz pasiva, a ver, si yo les digo, el perro está mordiendo al niño. Entonces lo que yo quiero decir es que el niño estaba siendo mordido por el perro. The boy, perdón, en presente, está siendo mordido. Is being bitten by the dog.
Yeah. So we're basically matching the verb. So it's being bitten by the dog. Yeah.
Okay. Ahora vamos a... Les voy a escribir otro en activo y ustedes me dicen cómo sería su conjugación en pasivo. Que es en futuro. Vamos a verlo en futuro. We will see it in future. How is the next sentence in future, teachers?
Okay. Yeah. So a simple one in the future. The active would be the dog will bite the boy.
Ok. Entonces, ¿cómo va a ser en pasivo? A ver, ustedes transfórmenlo. ¿Cómo lo transformarían a voz pasiva?
Feel free to type it in the chat to get ahead of us.
Yep. Háganlo, no importa que se equivoquen, que les quede mal o bien. Inténtenlo. Pista. Acuérdense que el verbo en pasado participio siempre, no importa que esté futuro, en pasado. Siempre va a ser mordido.
Perfect.
Yes.
Yeah, so I say, so it's will be bitten by the dog. Not biting by the dog, but yeah.
Yes. Entonces, fíjense, siempre se queda en pasado participio, no cambia este bitten. Bitten. Bitten or beaten? Or both?
Bitten. Like, I think it's just a dialect thing. Bitten is fine.
Bitten.
Beaten sounds like the past participle of to beat, like to hit.
Okay. So it's biting. Biting. No.
Bite or bitten.
Bitten. Bitten.
Yeah.
Okay. Bitten.
Yeah.
More short.
Bit and yeah.
Bitten. Yeah. Like beat. Okay. Like.
Yeah.
Will. Beat.
Yeah, bit like a small amount. It's the same word.
Okay. She will present. Okay. Now we will change other sentences. Could you tell me the next sentence for us, please?
Okay. Yeah. So we're gonna try and get you guys to get this, but I think you pretty much got it. So let's say the active version is she will present the research at the conference. Okay. So a lot of you are university students, and if you are in an academic field, you might get that. So this is a future tense one.
Ella presentará la conferencia. El pasivo sería la conferencia será presentada por ella.
Okay, so we're watching the subject, which is she, and then the object, which is the research. So first we switch them over. So the research, something by her, because we're changing where she is.
Yeah. Entonces, la única forma de entender bien es haciendo estas prácticas, o sea, practicando. Aquí les marqué, este es el sujeto y este es el objeto. No todo, a mí me confundía muchísimo eso del objeto. Simplemente que algunas acciones necesitan un complemento, necesitan otra cosa. Si yo te digo, le pegué, pero no te estoy señalando a nadie ni nada, ¿a quién? Como que está incompleto. Ella, imagínense que yo les digo, she will present, y me quedo callada. Present what? ¿Sí ven?
Almost Carla.
Almost Carla.
By
okay, I will wait.
her. But otherwise, yeah, perfect.
That's a good advice, Firas. Yeah.
She is the pronoun, and then her is the possessive pronoun, so, yeah.
Yeah. So,
she is used for the subject, and her is used for the object. And that's just for he, her,
Firas,
she.
Okay, yeah. So, in general, if I tell by, I will use by him,
by her, by him, by them.
By them, by us.
Yeah.
Okay.
Instead of he, she, we, they. At the conference by her. Yep.
By her
at the conference by her or by her at the conference. Either sounds right.
By her. Muy bien.
Typically, you're just going to want to switch the positions of the actor and the object. And then you would just leave like at the conference at the end just to make it easier on yourselves.
Yeah. O sea, como que los intercambian, ¿no? Los mueven de lugar. Muy bien. Ahora vamos a ver otro ejemplo. Let's do another sample.
All right. So yeah, the last one for our examples right now is half of the applicants failed the entrance exam.
Excellent.
All right.
Ok, ahora no les voy a dar pistas. Vamos a intentar hacerlo.
Failed, not paid. Sorry. All right.
Yes.
So then we point out the actor.
Yeah. This is the actor.
Yep.
And this is the object.
Yep, and then the verb. The entrance exam was failed by half of the applicants. Yep.
This is the verb.
Okay, great. Leslie, grammatically that's perfect, but in this case we are using the singular, which is not a big deal in most cases, but we know how the TOEFL can be tricky for no reason, right? Was failed by half of the applicants. Perfect. For Valeria, was failed. We're talking in the past tense.
The entrance exam was failed by half of the...
Was failed, not is failed.
Okay, your answers are...
You are close, was failed. There we go. Yep, pretty much everybody got it. Perfect. The entrance exam was failed by half of the applicants. Good work, Carla. Was failed by half the applicants, and it is. Okay, perfect. All right.
Okay, something else, I did it smaller, so it's easy to recognize that things are inverted. Like, now, this remain, okay, this will be moved. Now it's like visually more clear, right? That this goes to here and this goes to here. Okay, so what would be a good structure? What would be a good structure for like a pattern, a formula? How could we elicitate it?
Yeah, so basically the important parts, as we saw in the video, the object itself, the subject itself is not necessarily important, so it isn't required. But we always need the object, the past participle, and to be in the right verb form.
Mm-hmm.
And you can choose to add more, like adverbs, adjectives, whatever, and then by the subject.
Firas, a ver, déjales explico lo que acabas de decir. I will explain them what you just said. Guys, how would you... ¿Cómo harían una formulita para la voz pasiva? ¿Qué tenemos aquí? Aquí tenemos el objeto. Luego, ¿qué tenemos? Yes, first the object or the subject?
It's
the object.
It's the object because it's what's being acted on. Mm-hmm. I wrote that down wrong in our class notes.
No, don't worry. It was on purpose. Verb to be plus, and this is very little.
Yeah, verb to be, past participle, perfect.
Pops.
Right.
Okay. Yes.
And as we saw in the video, I didn't think about it, but instead of to be, sometimes they'll have to get. which I do use frequently, and a lot of people do, but I just didn't think of it at the time. So
to get.
Yeah, so like I got kicked
Okay.
by a child.
Okay, perfect. Yep. Very
Correct
good.
form and past participle. Yep, it's always past participle for the main verb. Perfect.
Ok, muy bien. Muy bien. José Pablo. The entrance exam was failed.
Yes.
Just double P.
Yep.
Okay, now I think the next content is very useful. Here it is. Entonces, les vamos a dar como tips o pistas de cómo pueden reconocer que está en voz pasiva. Le dejen algo más grande. Vamos como... Ahí está. Okay. Yes, Firas. So we can show them this. How to recognize passive voice.
Sorry, I was just answering something in the chat. Yeah, so there's a couple of main ways to recognize that you're reading something in the passive voice. If for some reason it's a confusing sentence or it doesn't stand out to you immediately that it's to be past participle.
Again, the first one, sorry. I moved the screen and that could confuse them.
Okay, so the first way to tell if it's not obvious to you as you read the sentence who's the actor and who's the passive is that it has the to be or to get and then some past participle, although maybe you don't know that it's past participle.
No, yeah, it
would be in the past after the to be.
Sí.
Yeah.
Ok, entonces, si ustedes encuentran un verbo to be y después un verbo en pasado participio, probablemente estén en voz pasiva. Ya sea que lo encuentren en presente, the book is written by, ¿no? Is written. Or...
Yeah, the book is written by the author. The author did the writing, so the book is the passive. Yeah.
Or been, este va a ser también súper común. En el examen lo van a encontrar muchísimo. El been o will be y luego ya, written, done, made. Ahora, en el examen TOEFL lo que pasa es que te van a poner muchos verbos regulares, que no va a ser tan obvio que están en pasivos. O sea, no te van a poner como esta palabrita que ya la ubicas más o menos que es pasado participio, sino que te van a poner así, verbos regulares que la palabrita es la misma. Okay.
And then another way is,
yes.
Like we've said, in the case of the passive voice, the subject isn't always important, but if it's included with by the or by someone, then that's an indicator that someone is the actor.
Claro. Sí, también pueden encontrar muy comúnmente un by de o by, ¿sale? En los enunciados que están de forma pasiva. Porque este by significa por, lo mismo que en español, como fue escrito por fulanito, ¿no? De hecho, en clase de español se les enseña eso. ¿Cómo reconocer voz pasiva en español? Por el por. Dato curioso. Okay, next one.
So we're going to go through some use cases. I know the video at the beginning did as well.
Yeah. No, yes.
Yeah, but we're going to go through them again in a little bit more detail and with more examples and answering any questions you have in the meantime. Okay, so either if the actor, the agent, or the subject, whichever you want to call it, is not known. So he was shot, or my rabbit was let out, or something like that. If you do want to do it in the active for some reason, you could always say, someone shot him, or someone let my rabbit out.
Okay.
But that doesn't really add useful information. Yes. So in that case, you would use the passive, he was shot, or the rabbit was let out. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's one use case.
Por ejemplo, lo que dice Firas es que cuando no sabemos quién es el que realiza la acción, es bueno utilizar voz pasiva. Ojo para los que escriban ensayos. Ajá. O si vamos a decir alguien, cualquiera, y eso no importa, también se pueden eliminar. Es como si yo les digo, alguien robó mi coche. Bueno, o te digo, mi coche fue robado ayer. Se robaron mi coche. ¿Sí ven? Ok, bueno, se robaron... no, se robaron no es voz pasiva, pero sí, mi coche fue robado ayer, ¿no? O en el reporte. Tal cantidad fue incrementada. Fue observado. De hecho, va a ser muy común, ojo, para todos los que están haciendo proyectos de investigación o quieren continuar con posgrados, es muy común para textos científicos. ¿Ha sido robado ayer? Sí. ¿O fue robado ayer? Sí. Sí. Ambos son voces pasivas de diferentes tiempos. Muy bien. Done, Firas. Next point, the scientific papers, please.
Okay. Yeah. So as was mentioned earlier, in academic writing, so usually it's not just to sound smart, but you don't want to feel biased or you don't want to use the first person because it's not important that you did it. So if you're writing a scientific paper, it doesn't matter that you heated the sample up. It matters that the sample was heated.
Mm-hmm.
So it's impartial because the actor doesn't matter.
Uh-huh. Sí. Buen punto, que para documentos científicos no importa, no vas a decir, yo hice esto. Bueno, que obviamente sí quisiera uno cantarlo, o lo quisieran cantar, ¿no? Pero en general en todos los documentos científicos se describen los pasos del experimento, del resultado, de forma pasiva. Uh-huh. Okay, Firas.
Okay. The main use case would be if you want to focus on the object, not the actor. So if you say, my car was stolen yesterday, you might care about the thief, but the main focus is your car. So yeah, my car was stolen yesterday. It might be by somebody you don't know or you do know, it doesn't matter. The focus, the important part of the sentence is the car.
Uh-huh. Perfecto, sí. Pues eso ya lo habíamos comentado, ¿no? Cuando te quieres enfocar en lo que recibió la acción, vamos a decir, ¿no? Uh-huh. Yeah, next one, Firas.
Okay. You don't always need an agent, an actor, or a subject if it's obvious to your target. So if you say, the company paid me to do my job, obviously your company is the one paying you. You could just say, I was paid to do my job. Or another example is if you were just talking about your mother and you say, yeah, I was asked to clean my room. Within the context, obviously, it is your mother asking you, and you don't need to say that every sentence. Yep. Mm-hmm. Any questions, feel free to ask, by the way.
¿Alguna preguntita? ¿Alguna pregunta?
Yeah. Or even if the actor is known or isn't obvious, even if it's not important. Like, I'm being picked up. Mm-hmm. Okay, so in English, this just means somebody's coming by car to take me home or something like that. Although I guess it could have some different meanings. And then we have this, so that covers most of the use cases. In general, it's okay to use the active in most cases, but these are some ways that you would know to use them or to recognize them being used, especially since a lot of you are in university. If you're going to be writing papers or something, it is usually better to use the passive voice. Usually, Patty, yeah. So if it's important that it's you who did it, like, then you would use your own, then you would use the first person, like, I did this, I did that. But in most cases, it doesn't matter. It's more about what happens to the object. But yes, in general. Sorry.
Yes, so in some sense, does it sound more formal when you read something in passive voice?
It can sound more formal, especially if you're writing, again, a scientific essay or something.
But if you don't...
But if not, it still can sound more formal and, like, stuffy.
Okay.
Like the guy mentioned earlier, some people use it to sound smarter than they are.
Stuffy significa como...
Yeah, so it's like the people that read the dictionary just to find hard words to use, you know?
Yeah. Okay. Bueno, vamos a continuar.
But again, not always. Like the example we had earlier was, he was shot. That's obviously not formal, it's very informal, casual even.
Okay.
Yeah. So outside of those use cases, yeah, pretty much.
A ver, vamos a practicar. Después de hacer este ejercicio les voy a mostrar algunos ejemplos vamos a hacer algunos ejemplitos de errores del examen en TOEFL, cómo se aplica voz pasiva a TOEFL, ¿sale? A ver, entonces primero vamos a reconocer si es voz pasiva o voz activa. Entonces, lo que van a hacer es que van a contestar en el chat. 1, ¿qué opinan? Le ponen una P o una A. 2, P o A. 3, etcétera. ¿Sale? Vamos a tener, yo creo que como 5 minutitos para hacerlos.
Okay, yeah. So keep in mind, these are newspaper headlines, so the grammar isn't perfect. They shorten it a bit to fit in more.
Sí, son muy diferentes, Pablo. Por ejemplo, el reported speech es para repetir algo que alguien más dijo. Entonces, lo voy a explicar primero en español y luego vemos un ejemplito en inglés. Ok. Supongamos que Laura dice: estoy triste. Entonces, es muy diferente a yo decir: Laura dijo que estaba triste. ¿Ok? ¿Por qué se parecen en inglés? Porque como en reported speech tú conjugas el verbo un tiempo atrás del que la persona utilizó. O sea, si lo dijo en presente, tú lo dices en pasado. Pero no se utiliza voz, no se utiliza pasado participio. Por ejemplo, aquí, he said, nada más está en pasado simple. Él dijo que. He said he was sad. Because his car was stolen. Okay, time. Let's review them. So, would you help us reading the first one for us, please?
Yeah, okay. So the first one is thousands of Delta flights canceled days after storms. Okay, so first thing we need to do is remember that this is a news headline. So they cut out the auxiliary verbs usually. So the grammatically full sentence of that would be thousands of Delta flights were canceled days after the storm. That's just how newspapers are written. So, yeah. So, what is the subject?
A ver, chicos, este es un ejemplo confuso porque no tenemos el patrón, ¿no? Del verbo to be. Ay, entonces, ¿para qué lo vimos? Bueno, lo que aquí nos comenta es que a veces se come el verbo to be en títulos de cabeceras, como de artículos, etcétera. Pero esto es, a ver, se los voy a leer como si fuera activo y como si fuera pasivo, ¿no? Voz activa. Cientos de vuelos Delta cancelaron días después de la tormenta. No, o sea, los vuelos no cancelaron a nadie, ellos fueron cancelados. ¿Se fijan? O sea, los vuelos no están haciendo una acción, no son el sujeto, no es el actor. Entonces es por eso que es pasiva. Okay, next one.
So for the English way, yeah, so we don't have the subject there. We only have the thing that was acted on, which are the flights. And then canceled because those were canceled by something we don't know. So that one is passive for those of you that got that. Okay. Number 2 is a little bit of a trick, but let's go through it. University of Pittsburgh group invents wheelchair powered by compressed air. All right. So in this case,
está súper complejo este. It's very complex.
Yeah, well, because it's 2 parts. And the first part, which is the main part, we have the University of Pittsburgh group, and that's the subject. And then the main verb is invents, and then the object is the wheelchair, which makes this an active sentence.
Okay.
Yeah, but if we were just looking at the second part, a wheelchair powered by compressed air, that part would be passive. But of course, it's not just that part, it is the full sentence, and the main subject is the group, which makes it an active sentence. Yep, so this is a case where we can mix
both
active and passive. Yeah.
Okay.
2 active, yeah, a lot of people got 2 active. Not everybody, but almost. Okay. 3. So this one is based on context. Sorry?
A pause, Firas. I just want to tell them something that here the most important thing is this verb. That's why it is active. Yeah, that's all. Because it's really confusing. Yeah.
Okay. So family expected to recover after Liberty Bridge wreck. Okay. So based on context, we would assume it is the doctor expecting them to recover, or something like that. The doctors, the nurses, it doesn't matter. I guess technically it doesn't need to be. The family could have expected it themselves, but let's go with the most likely explanation, which is that the family is the object. Right? So the family was expected to recover, you know? Which makes that a passive sentence. Perfect.
This was very confused. Family expects to recover after Liberty Bridge. Okay. So is it the same to say it was expected the family to recover?
It was expected that the family would recover, yeah. Or the doctors expected the family to recover, something like that.
So which one is the main verb here?
So in this case, the main verb is expected, yeah. Recover is a verb too, yeah, but, you know, so is a wreck. But in this case, the main verb is expected.
Esperó para recuperarse. Se esperaba... que esperaba recuperarse. Que fue esperado que se recuperara.
Yeah, so the main verb is expected, it comes first. We could say the family recovered eventually. So yeah, the family recovered a month later, and then recover would be the main verb. Yeah. But in this case, expected is the main verb.
Okay.
Okay, yeah, so that one is passive because it's not the family doing the expecting, most likely.
4.
Okay. Yeah. 4. Former interns tell how they landed a first job.
Firas. These samples are very, very, very tricky.
Yeah, well...
That's the point. Yeah. It's very...
It's especially the point because the TOEFL exams are going to try to trick you, basically. And this is how newspaper articles are written. So it's not just tricky, it's real world stuff, right? So okay. So the main verb here is tell, right?
Yeah.
Which means the former interns is the subject. And here, in this case, we don't have an object.
This is a noun clause.
Yeah. So the grammatically full version of that sentence would be, the interns tell us or tell you how they landed their job. But again, this is a newspaper article specifically, so...
Yeah, it's active. Okay.
Yeah, perfect. 4 is active.
Number 5? Okay.
And 3 was passive, yeah. Okay, and then number 5. 30,000-year-old jewelry found in Indonesia. Okay?
Okay.
So we only have one verb, which makes the main verb very easy, right? Found.
Yeah, but it's a regular one. ¿Fue encontrada en Indonesia o la joyería encontró algo? Ya con eso les digo todo.
Okay, yeah. So, like with the other ones, because the newspapers cut out the auxiliary verb, it's hard to tell. So, let's go on context clues. Obviously, the jewelry is not going to find anything, so it must have been found by somebody instead, which means it's acted upon, which means it's a passive sentence.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Híjoles, están un poco confusos. Okay. Firas, I would like to show them a sample tenses from the TOEFL test related to passive voice.
Sure. And we have 5 passive, 5 passive, 5 passive. Perfect.
Están mucho más sencillos que estos últimos, pero sí algo confusos. Vamos a revisar un par ya para concluir. Yo sé que es tarde. Vamos a ver. Ya un par mandaron sus TikToks súper bien hechos. Están bien buenos. Mañana les voy a empezar a compartir ya los de sus compañeros. Todos los voy a poner en un archivito para que vean los de sus compañeros y los califiquen con corazón los que les gustaron. Aquí está. Problems with passive verbs. Bueno, pues este ejemplo está muy sencillito, ¿no? A comparación de después, Margaret wrote the letter was written by Margaret. Ok, pero vamos a ver cómo nos los ponen en el examen. Bueno, igual nos dan lo de la formulita, B más el pasado participio. Pero a ver, vamos a hacer un ejemplo ya de TOEFL. Firas, would you help us reading number 4, please?
Sure, once the video feed catches up with you.
Sorry, I thought you were... I know. You are watching my face, not my video.
I'm usually tagged into the YouTube window.
Here. There is number 4.
Okay. So particular issues that concern teenagers were covering in the half-hour program.
A ver, entonces este va a ser un ejemplo súper común en el examen. ¿Cuál es el error? ¿Y por cuál debería de ser cambiado? Exactamente, Daniel. Were covered. Entonces fueron cubiertos. Problemas particulares que tienen que ver con adolescentes fueron cubiertos en el programa de media hora. Bueno, acuérdense, hado, ido, tocho, fueron cubiertos. Entonces debería decir verbo to be más verbo en pasado participio. Muy bien. Now let's review number 5.
All right. So we have electrical impulses may also picked up by the optic nerve. Okay. And while everybody decides on that, we will say the optic nerve is doing the action. Right? So the electrical impulses are the object. Right, so how are we doing the main verb?
Aquí vamos a mezclar dos reglitas, ¿eh? Acuérdense que este es un modal verb. ¿Qué vimos de los modal verbs? Que deben de ¿qué? Ser seguidos por...
It's not there. Okay.
Acuérdense que todos los modal verbs necesitan ser seguidos por un verbo en infinitivo o en su base. Exacto, Aldair, muy bien. Entonces, ¿cómo sería? How would be the right answer or the correct answer for us?
Okay, so the correct answer is actually C, not B. Remember the form for the main verb? The main verb is picked up, and we need to be, right? So electrical impulses also may also be picked up by the optic nerve.
Sí, aquí se le debería de añadir be. Un be se debería de insertar aquí. Okay.
So yeah, so the optic nerve is the thing that's doing the action. So the action it's doing is picking up the impulses, which means picking up is the main verb.
Muy bien.
Well, I see a lot of B's, so I'm not sure that was clear.
And I think that's all for today. Because
it's already 10:30, huh?
Yeah.
So let's just give them the last one as a homework exercise.
Yes. Do you want me to send you this, guys? I can send it to you after the class. Se los puedo mandar.
Yeah, so that one has no tricks or anything, but it'll get you, familiar with stuff.
Y se los paso con respuestas, ¿sale? Bueno, entonces, también van a tener muchos ejercicios para practicar ahora que tengan su material, ¿vale? ¿Dónde estás, Firas? Aquí. Where are you, Firas? Are you learning some Spanish? No.
I loaded up Duolingo yesterday. I'm not sure it's very useful, but I'm trying.
Okay, so thank you guys for everything. This is now the last class. Finally, you just need to finish your TikTok, and we will send you your diplomas and your kit with all the simulators and everything. Okay. Les vamos a estar mandando sus recomendaciones. Qué bueno, Aldair. That's nice to hear. Voy a aprovechar para pedirles, si nos hacen una recomendación en la página, les voy a compartir la liga. Es muy útil porque estamos como promocionando los otros cursos y mucha gente cree que es una estafa. A lo mejor ustedes mismos pensaban eso. Entonces, cuando nos dan referencias, pues hace todo el proyecto más confiable, ¿no? Entonces, se los agradeceríamos mucho. Muy buena pregunta, Antonio. Para el deadline del TikTok es el jueves a las 10 p.m. ¿Sale? El viernes va a ser ya la selección. Hay uno bien padre que subió su compañero, pero no sé si se los enseño, ya es hacer trampa, porque todos van a tener calificaciones parejas. Pero entre más pronto lo suban, pues es más fácil que obtengan likes, por eso es importante que lo suban pronto. ¿Sale? Pero a ver, ¿cómo hacemos esto equitativo? Yo creo que no, se los voy a subir todos el viernes para que, si no, el que lo subió hoy va a tener muchos más likes, ¿no? Se los voy a subir a todos. Sí, claro, pueden ponerle música. I will show you one. I will show you one from one student because it's a great work. You can be as creative as you want. Les voy a enseñar uno, ¿sale? A ver, uno que me mandó un compañero de ustedes. A ver, déjenme ver. ¿En qué equipo fue? Espérenme. Creo que es este. Este es uno de sus compañeras. Está muy bien él también. Ay, qué bonito. Está bien padre. Vamos a ver. Y lo pueden hacer tan creativos como quieran. Aquí está otro. No tienen que hablar. Lo pueden pronunciar, pero... A ver, espérense. A ver. Ay, no sé si lo puedo repetir. A ver. Ok, listo. Si pueden compartir los TikToks, ya después del viernes, vamos a ser justos, porque después del viernes ya lo pueden compartir a sus amigos, a todo el mundo, ¿sale? Pero ahora vamos a mantenerlo como con los de aquí del curso para que sea un poquito también más justo y equitativo, ¿va? Bueno, ya es todo por ahora. El viernes va a ser la sesión final. Vamos a tener la premiación de los mejores TikToks y por ahí va a haber una invitada que es la maestra que va a dar alemán y el profesor que va a dar italiano y vamos a hablarles así un ratito. Va a ser pequeña la sesión. Va a ser este viernes de 8 a 9, ¿sale? Bueno. Muy bien, Pati. Bye, chicos. Bye, Firas. Thank you so much.
All right, we're all done. So I'll say, as usual, I'll be around until YouTube decides to shut off the chat if anybody has any last-minute questions. Right? It was great having you for the few hours that I was here, and thank you very much. Have a good night.
Okay. Bye.